Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Car on the Hauler post Martinsville Speedway. We had the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series plus the NASCAR Cup Series in Virginia at the Paperclip for Martinsville Speedway Weekend. Of course, an off week for the Craftsman Truck Series, but next week, the Truck Series and the O'Reilly Series will be heading to the Rockingham for Easter weekend, as NASCAR, the Cup Series at least, will take off on Easter Sunday. But let's get to what we saw in Martinsville weekend. But right before we do that, let's go through our weekend winners, the weekly top 10, and then, of course, a points update for the Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Let's first start going through our weekend winners. We will discuss them more at length a little bit later. But starting in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, we had Justin Allgaier, who looked like the best car throughout most of the race, has the hot hand. He's won 3 out of the last 4 races, of course, winning at Phoenix, and then winning last week at Darlington, and now winning this past weekend in Martinsville. And then in the NASCAR Cup Series, we had Chase Elliott get his first win of the year, along with Hendrick and Chevrolet getting their first win in the Cup Series this season. All right, now let's take a look at our top 10 results from the weekend for the O'Reilly Series and the NASCAR Cup Series from Martinsville, starting with the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Of course, Justin Allgaier getting another win, but once again, another great performance from Corey Day, who was very strong all race long, along with all the Junior Motorsports cars, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. But a fantastic day for Corey Day. That first win is right around the corner. And same thing for Sammy Smith. Both Corey Day and Sammy Smith have been consistently running in the top 10 every single week. So a good start of the season for them. And I could say the same thing for Sheldon Creed, who's been consistently in the top 5. Sheldon Creed's had a fantastic start of the season. He's putting himself in that championship conversation. And then probably the story of not just the day, but potentially the weekend was Lee Pulliam, who we're going to talk more about Lee later, but I'm just really happy for this guy. He was down on pit road, gave a great interview. You can tell he was a little nervous, and he was just really thinking about probably his whole career in that moment. He had a great, beautiful moment with Dale Jr., and Jr. is doing a great job bringing in these local short track guys. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but very happy for Lee. Austin Hill, he did win a stage and overall ran pretty well throughout the day. I know he had higher expectations with the 6th place finish. Dean Thompson, very surprising top 10. He's actually had a difficult start to the year, but he got a 7th place finish. We had Ross Chastain, who was pretty quiet all race long, getting an 8th place finish other than him spinning at one point in the race. In 9th, we had Ryan Sieg, who honestly hasn't gotten off to as strong of a start this season as I think he hoped. And then Brent Cruz with his last race at the age of 17. I think he's turning 18 today. I'm recording this on Monday. I think he's turning 18 today. Top 10 for Brent Cruz. And then we look over at the NASCAR Cup Series, where we have Chase Elliott with the win. I know the Chase Sexuals were very happy about that. We had Denny Hamlin, who had a very dominant day with a 2nd place finish. Joey Logano really recovering from last week, a horrible week last week in Darlington. He hasn't actually looked that great throughout a good portion of the season, but gets a 3rd place finish and continues that very impressive top 10 streak. I think that's 14 straight top 10s for Joey Logano at Martinsville in the Cup Series, which is very impressive. And then Ty Gibbs continues to string along these fantastic runs. He's having a career year, and the question now is, when is he going to win? When is Ty Gibbs going to go to victory lane? It's going to happen any day now. William Byron with the 5th place finish at one of his best racetracks. Ryan Blaney with the 6th place finish. I think Blaney had more of a top 3 car. He ended up getting put in the wall late by Denny Hamlin. In my opinion, it looked like Ty Gibbs gave Hamlin a slight bump there, which put Hamlin in that position. Nonetheless, Blaney had a great day. Christopher Bell, honestly, surprisingly quiet. I expected a little bit more out of him today, but still a top 10 run. Austin Cindric looked pretty good throughout the day, an 8th place finish. Kyle Larson, same thing with him as it was with Bell, just didn't quite look as strong as I may have expected him to, but still a top 10 run, and then a much-needed top 10 run for Josh Berry, who's had a abysmal, horrible start to the year, and coming into one of his best racetracks, being Martinsville. He ran top 10, even top 5 at portions in this race. He looked strong throughout the day, 10th place finish. So with Josh Berry in there, all 4 Penske, I know the 3 of them are Penske cars, one of them's technically Wood Brothers car, all four of them finished in the top 10 today. And every driver in the top 10 was part of the big 3 if you include Josh Berry as Penske. The whole top 10 was Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske. That was the whole top 10 that we saw at Martinsville Speedway. Now that we're done going through the top 10 results, let's look at the points update. We look at the top 3 in points from each series, and then we look, of course, at the bubble battle. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube on the far right, the Truck Series, it's still the same standings. You have Chandler Smith leading. You have Justin Haley on the bubble, and you have Brendan Queen and Tyler Ankrum just outside. Truck Series, of course, racing next week at Rockingham. But in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, we still have Justin Allgaier as the points leader, and he has a 92 point advantage on Jesse Love, which is completely insane. Sheldon Creed, third in points, 116 points back. Then we go over to the bubble battle, 9th in points. Parker Retzlaff, who had a great run all day, was running top 5 to top 10 all day, but got caught up in some madness throughout points of the day and was just never able to quite get back to that. But I felt like he had top 5, definitely top 10 speed. We had Raja Karuth, who's 10th in points, 198 points back of Allgaier. He's 20 points back of Retzlaff. Karuth ran top 5 throughout a good portion of this day. Probably didn't get the finish that he really wanted as well. Same thing you could say for Sam Mayer. 201 points back, 11th in points. Looked really good. Taylor Gray. I think Taylor Gray's big issue was, because this is probably his best racetrack, Martinsville. His big issue all day, he was just constantly stuck in traffic. He was constantly trying to pass cars all day. He got caught up in a lot of madness throughout the day, and he's currently on the bubble, 209 points back. 209 points back, 12th in points of Justin Allgaier. That really says how strong Allgaier's start of the season has been. And then the first guy on the outside, actually a decent distance behind Taylor Gray, 13th in points. We have Fast Pasta, Anthony Alfredo, and then only 1 point behind Alfredo and 21 points behind Taylor Gray for that last chase spot is William Sawalich. And then we take a look at the NASCAR Cup Series, where Tyler Reddick didn't really have that great of a day. He was running top 15 most of the day, but he wasn't really a threat for the top 10 or the top 5 throughout most of the day. He has the points lead still, 82 points above Ryan Blaney. And then we have Bubba Wallace, who we'll talk more about Bubba Wallace later, but in my opinion, pretty much shot himself in the foot. But he had probably a top 10 car. He was running around just outside the top 10 throughout a good portion of the day up until his incident with Carson Hocevar. He's 3rd in points. And then we look back at the bubble battle, 13th in points. We have Ryan Priest, who's 173 points back of Tyler Reddick. We have SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, who ran anywhere between 5th and 10th all race long. He ended up getting an 11th place finish, but a fantastic run for Shane. 179 points back of Reddick. 15th in points, we have Carson Hocevar, 182 points back from Reddick. And then on the cut line, 186 points back from Reddick is Daniel Suarez. And then 9 points behind Suarez is his teammate, Michael McDowell. Those 3 Spire cars just are staying so close to each other. They're all performing very similar almost every week. Michael McDowell's 9 points behind Daniel Suarez. And then a great run from Cindric this week. Helps himself with the points. He's 18th in points, 18 points back of Daniel Suarez. All right, now that we're done with the weekend winners, the top 10 results, and of course, points update, let's go through the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race to start off with. Once again, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series puts on a phenomenal show. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Martinsville is always a barn burner. Honestly, any car other than the current generation of car in the Cup Series, the next gen, other than that car, I think every single car you put on this racetrack, it's going to be a great race, whether that's the Whelen Modifieds, the Craftsman Truck Series, ARCA, the O'Reilly Series cars. Heck, they put the Miatas on here, and the Miatas even put on a pretty good show, I would say, at Martinsville. It's pretty much everything but the Cup Series right now. But a great race for the O'Reilly Series. We saw a lot of passing. We did see maybe a little too, especially during the middle to early portion, a little bit near the end of these races. I expect there to be a lot of wrecks, but the middle portion of this race, we saw some back-to-back wrecks, some decent-sized wrecks throughout the field. I wasn't a big fan of that, but it's Martinsville. It's come to be expected. So overall, either way, overall, it's just a very entertaining race that was primarily dominated by the Junior Motorsports / Hendrick Motorsports boys. At one point, they were running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, they just looked, all the cars part of that stable just looked really strong all Saturday afternoon. I think the best of them was probably Justin Allgaier. Maybe by the end of that thing, Lee could have been the best potentially. And we'll talk more about Lee in a second. But Lee seemed like he figured it out throughout the day and had great speed at the very end of that number 9 Jerky Boys Chevrolet. But Junior Motorsports just once again strutted their stuff at Martinsville. They always seem to be so good as a race team at Martinsville. Pretty much anywhere we go, I think Junior Motorsports is probably the class of the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. It's probably the best race team, especially with now getting even more support from Hendrick with the HendrickCars.com, with there actually being a full-time Hendrick Motorsports entry out there with Corey Day. So just a great performance from Junior Motorsports and Hendrick Motorsports and just the O'Reilly Series in general. Like I said, the O'Reilly Series tends to put on a show pretty much every week. At a track like Martinsville, it ends up being pretty crazy, and we had another pretty crazy race with some crazy incidents. The craziest incident probably involved Lee, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series at Martinsville Speedway this past weekend? All right, let's talk about, in my opinion, the story of the weekend. That was Lee Pulliam, who ran great all day. He had a lot of speed in practice. This past weekend at Martinsville was his first career start in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. He's considered a local short track legend. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm like, I don't know a lot about Lee. I'm going to be honest. I don't know a lot about Lee. I know that he's done really well for himself in local short track racing. I know he won a late model stock race a couple weeks ago. He's had a bunch of championships in different divisions and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm not going to act like I am an expert on Lee Pulliam's history, but to see a driver like Lee Pulliam have as much success as he did on Saturday was pretty awesome. We saw the same thing with Bubba Pollard at Richmond, and Junior's giving all these short track guys their opportunities, which is freaking awesome. I want to go through Lee's day a little bit. Lee throughout the weekend looked like he was learning. He was just kind of learning on the spot. He clearly had a lot of speed. He's raced Martinsville dozens and dozens of times, if not hundreds of times. He's raced at Martinsville Speedway, has a lot of experience there. And it looked like he was just figuring out the car all weekend long. It seemed like he actually did pretty good with the pit stops. I didn't really see any issues with him with pit stops. I think his big issue throughout Saturday was getting down restarts. It seems like that's what he really struggled with, was the restarts. A couple of times he spun his tires. When he was up in the lead, he made a couple of different mistakes, giving Allgaier the lead. And then, of course, I don't know if he missed. I think he explained it afterwards. I forget exactly. I think he said that he just kind of spun the tires on that restart that everybody got wrecked in. That was a clusterfuck on the front straightaway. We saw a lot of destroyed race cars. The most destroyed race car was his teammate, Carson Quaffle, who ran right in the back of him. It looked like that he missed a shift. I guess spinning the tires is possible too, but with how much he slowed down in the moment, I honestly thought that he missed a shift, but he explained later that he just kind of spun the tires right there and then. He just didn't really, you don't know what you don't know, and he was just kind of learning on the spot when it came to some of those things. And if he was better at the restarts and this and that, I think he could have won. Because like I said, I felt like most of that race, Justin Allgaier was the class of the field. But at the very end of that thing, it seemed like Lee Pulliam just had it all figured out. It seemed like he had it all figured out. And if he was able to hit those restarts near the end of that thing, I think we would have saw Lee Pulliam win. I think Lee Pulliam probably would have won that race if we didn't see everything that happened on the restarts. I think he would have went to victory lane in his first start and gotten the win, and that would have been very cool. nonetheless, it was a fantastic day. And I think the real story here would be the opportunities that Dale Jr. has given to some of these local short track guys, and they've had success. Like Josh Berry, the first time he came around, when it was, I think the first time he came around, it was Nationwide Series at the time, and he raced a couple races, and that was way before Junior Motorsports were nearly as good as they are now. At that point, they really had Brad. Like, Brad was their bread and butter. Brad Keselowski was racing for him, and he was the only guy that really had any success for him. I think they had Kelly Byers, I think his name was. He didn't really pan out, and they had a couple other drivers that didn't really pan out. I think Barry, in his limited starts all the way back then, did better than probably was expected. Didn't have any sponsorship for him or anything like that, but eventually he was able to come back again later and had a lot of success with Junior Motorsports, and now he's a Cup Series driver and a Cup Series winner. I was there when he won at Vegas last year for the Wood Brothers. Of course, we saw the Bubba Pollard experiment last year, and I think that went really well. Bubba Pollard was one of the best cars throughout the weekend and arguably could have ended up winning that race at Richmond. And then we had Lee Pulliam this past weekend. I really like what Junior's doing right now. He's kind of bringing that old school flair and that old school stuff from NASCAR, from old school NASCAR. Because that's how NASCAR used to be. It didn't really matter back then what sponsorship or money. I mean, that always helps. I'm not saying that doesn't help. But back then it was more about the skill and less about what sponsorships you have or what money you have. It was more about the skill that you bring to the table, and the team and everybody, they'll figure out the sponsorship. They'll figure out all that for you as long as you're able to go out there and get some good runs, keep the car clean, and just get some good finishes, and compete for wins. That's how it used to be. And seeing what Junior has done with Bubba and now what he's done here with Lee, it gives me a lot of excitement on what could happen with not just Junior Motorsports, but just with NASCAR in general, because I know a lot of people have noticed this. I know, for example, like the Cars Tour, it's becoming a lot bigger. I think the Cars Tour is probably the biggest thing in asphalt short track racing at this point, and asphalt short track racing has, I wouldn't say died, but it's definitely died down over the last 20, 30 years. It's really not nearly as popular as it used to be. It doesn't make as much money as it used to be. We see a lot of even well-known, popular local short tracks like Myrtle Beach get shut down because they're just not selling enough tickets. They're not making enough money. The dirt racing is definitely a pretty big money maker right now, especially over in High Limit. They're doing all the right stuff. And I think the Cars Tour is doing all the right stuff right now too. And I would like for these drivers to continue to get attention and get runs. For example, Connor Hall is going to race at Rockingham in the Truck Series. I'm very excited about that. And just having these local short track guys that may not have all the money in the world or all the sponsorship backing in the world get some well-deserved opportunities, no matter how old they are. Like Justin Bonsignore, I know that wasn't really necessarily a handout from Gibbs. Like these opportunities, when it came to Bubba and when it came to Lee, they earned it with their skill, but at the same time, it wasn't really. It was kind of handout. Justin Bonsignore put a lot into his, but that's a little bit different. But it's also a very similar example. Seeing Justin Bonsignore race in those O'Reilly Auto Parts Series races last year, he had some success, didn't really get the finishes I think he wanted, but I love seeing it, and I want to see more of it. I want to see more of these very talented local short track sort of drivers getting their opportunities. Like we see Michael Christopher Jr. is also going to be racing at Rockingham in the Truck Series for Stuart Friesen for his race team in the number 62. Some of you may remember him from the Ram Show, Race for the Sea. Some of you may remember him from there, and he also ran a couple races for Stewie last year in the 62 as well. So just seeing some of these local short track and some of the local dirt guys as well, some of these drivers that may not have all the financial support and all the sponsor support as some of these other drivers have, getting these opportunities, I think is great for the sport, and I want to see more of it. And hopefully the fact that Junior's doing this, maybe other teams could be willing to do it as well. I don't know what other teams are really capable of pulling stuff like this off. Like a one-off, I think, is one thing. A one-off is one thing, but like 10, 20, even like a full season, something like that, I think is a completely different thing. But we'll have to see what happens in the future with that. I'm hoping that this really starts a trend and we see more of these really talented race car drivers move up and at least get some sort of opportunity. Because I think I've used this example. I don't know if I've used it on this show before, but I like with other sports, for example, like soccer or baseball or football or any of these sports. Like obviously equipment and all that stuff costs money, but if you work hard enough and you go to the right places and you do the right things, you can be discovered. Like we probably know who the best player for each sport is. I mean, there's probably some sports where there's a couple people that just couldn't get in front of the right people or whatever the case may be, or maybe didn't work hard enough to get in front of the right people. But when it comes to motorsports and racing, like car racing, the best racer in the world, we probably have no idea who they are. The best motorsports racer in the world, we probably don't know who they are. They've probably won their local short track championship like 20, 30 times, but we don't know who they are because they've never stepped it up to a bigger series because they don't have enough sponsorship or enough money to move up to a Cars Tour or ARCA or NASCAR. I'm not saying the Cars Tour is like the most expensive series, but racing's expensive. Motorsports and racing is extremely expensive. I never got an opportunity to go racing, and I wouldn't say my family was poor or anything. I'd say we were like middle class. It's expensive. It's very expensive to race. So to see these drivers that actually have a lot of skill get these opportunities, I think is fantastic for the sport, and I really want to see more of it. That was supposed to be a pretty short discussion, but I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, and I want to see more of this. I want to see more of what we saw this past weekend with Lee. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Lee Pulliam's performance at Martinsville for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and how do you feel about my little talk right there? Do you want to see more of these local short track guys get these opportunities? You want to see some of these drivers that may not have all the sponsorship and all the money backing and the social media presence that some of these other drivers have get their potentially well-deserved opportunities? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's move on to our race winner, Lil Gator, the alligator, Justin Allgaier. I don't know what else to say about him. I really don't. Justin Allgaier, and there's been a big discussion about if he's a Hall of Famer. It was a big discussion all week. He's won 3 out of the last 4. He's been the man when it comes to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. He hasn't been like one of the favorites or anything like that. Every single year that he's been in the O'Reilly Series going into the season, even last year when Zilic was coming in, because we didn't know. I hit my board right there. We didn't know how good Zilic was going to end up doing. We knew that Zilic could potentially be a threat for the championship. This is coming from somebody who believes in Zilic more than anybody. I've been following Zilic since he was like 16. I've been a big fan of him for a long time, but I didn't even think he was going to perform as well as he did last season. I would say I'm comfortably saying this, over the last 10 years, most people have thought going into every single year that Justin Allgaier was going to be the champion. He's been the man. He's been the guy to beat in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, the Xfinity Series, and even some of the Nationwide Series era for a really long time. He's been the guy to beat, and he does it again. He does it again at Martinsville, winning 3 out of the last 4. Like, that's just insane, but overall it's still not very surprising because it's freaking Justin Allgaier, and all the cars looked extremely strong at Martinsville, and Allgaier has one of the best I was about to say one of the best racing IQs, but he does definitely make some mistakes from time to time. I think he's definitely calmed down with those, and I think that's why it took him so long to win a championship in the first place. It's because he shoots himself in the foot a lot. I think he's improved with that quite a bit over the years. But Justin Allgaier has cemented himself as not just one of the favorites, but he's the clear championship favorite, has almost 100-point advantage on second place in points. He's racing his ass off right now. He just looks completely dominant every single week. And I wouldn't be surprised if he locks up the championship for Homestead. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins this weekend at Rockingham and gets 3 in a row and 4 out of the last 5. I would not be surprised one bit. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on and wins the next 3-4 races. I just really wouldn't. Justin Allgaier is really good anywhere we go. Anywhere we go, he is really good. He has one of the best pit crews. He has one of the best race teams. It's going to be really hard for anybody to beat Justin Allgaier this season. And his streak continues, winning 3 out of the last 4. He has 2 in a row, winning Darlington and then winning Martinsville. Can he win at the Rock? We'll have to see. I don't really know what else to say about him that I don't say almost every week at this point, because Justin Allgaier is just he's the frickin' man. He's the frickin' man. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Justin Allgaier's performance, not just this week at Martinsville, but the way he has started this season? He has a commanding point lead, and he's won 3 out of the last 4 races. All right, let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series. What can I say? Definitely wasn't... I wouldn't say I was hyping up the race going into the weekend if you saw my preview. I definitely said that it wasn't going to be great, but I definitely also said that I thought it was going to be the best race we've seen in the next-gen era of Martinsville. And I don't know if I ended up being right on that. I mean, I think if some ways you look at it, I think there was definitely some positives. I definitely saw a lot more passing. There might not have been a lot of passing for the lead, because Denny Hamlin was by far the best car. It wasn't even a question. Denny Hamlin was leaps and bounds the best car in that field. But if you look throughout the field, there was definitely... Fox just does... Honestly, if there's not a lot of passing up front, you don't see a lot of passing, because Fox doesn't like to go through the field a lot. They really don't. Fox is really bad about looking through the field. There was definitely a decent amount of passing, more passing than what we would usually see at Martinsville. I would compare this race very similarly to what I would compare the fall race last year, the semifinal race that we had last year. I would compare it very, very closely to that race. We did have a lot of tire fall off in this event. You can tell by the sides of the cars. There was rubber plastered over all the side of these cars, a lot of tire rubber on the sides of these cars. And when we'd see drivers with fresher tires, that was able to make a difference. Like, tires definitely mattered. Honestly, I think the upgrade in horsepower didn't really do much. I think it helped with certain things, like we saw Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin near the end of the race. And Denny Hamlin was doing this throughout a good portion of the race, where he would try to save his tires by not shifting down, by just staying in fourth. He would just stay in one gear, and he wouldn't shift back and forth. He just stayed in the one gear. So I think the horsepower really helped when it came to that aspect. But any other way, when it comes to an actual racing side by side, getting off the corner, out of control off the corner sort of aspect, it didn't really do anything there. The horsepower didn't have the effect that I thought it would have, and I think a lot of people thought it would have. Just didn't quite pan out the way I think anybody really wanted it to, and made the passing, because the passing was still very difficult. I said before, was there more passing than what we usually see at Martinsville with this generation of car? For sure. There's definitely a lot more passing than what we've seen, but it still wasn't great. I did see Jeff Gluck's poll. It's around 50-50, but then I looked through the comments and seeing what everybody's seeing on X, and I think that mainly if it wasn't Chase Elliott winning the race, it probably wouldn't be 50-50. I think it'd probably be like 30% like the race, but Chase Elliott got his first win of the year, so I think a lot of people were very hyped about that, about Elliott winning. Just overall, just wasn't a good race, and it's a shame, because I think Martinsville is one of the best racetracks on the schedule. Some of you that may follow the Pace Car Boys, we do a podcast over there, Hit the Pace Car. Corey is one of the people on that show. Corey has watched Martinsville when he was younger, when he used to watch NASCAR a good amount, and I don't think he really remembers too much of it back then, because I wouldn't say he was a casual fan, but he wasn't as into it as I am, or maybe even my other co-host Tyler at the time. And at this point, Corey's all in. But when Corey started getting all back into NASCAR, it was like right when the next gen really came about, is when he started getting really back into NASCAR again, is when the next gen came in. So Corey, for example, as someone who's, I wouldn't say he's a new fan, but he's semi-new, he's back on track to being a big-time NASCAR fan, he hates Martinsville. he hates Martinsville. And I don't really have an argument for him because next gen or this generation of car, whatever the hell you want to call this generation of car, it hasn't looked good. It's looked horrible at short tracks. It's kind of ruined short track racing. And I'm mainly disappointed also because I saw what happened at Bowman Gray. I know at points there was rain that really helped the racing. I would say actually it made the racing better, surprisingly, when the rain came into play. But even when we didn't see the rain, I think the racing was better than what I expected. But the track was also very cold at Bowman Gray, so the rubber isn't really sticking to the track as much. So the tires are going to make even more of a difference in the colder weather compared to the warmer weather. So there is that, and I will give that. But it just wasn't good. It just wasn't good. It wasn't entertaining, really, any way you really looked at it. Like I said, there was more passing than what we've seen at Martinsville in this generation of car. But other than that, didn't really see much of a difference. Like the tires made a difference, but we didn't see various strategies throughout much of the day. Another reason why I would like for there to be no stage yellows, because maybe we would have seen a more entertaining race if we didn't have the stage yellows. And I've been harping on this for a while. If we didn't have the stage yellows, maybe we would have had actually a better race than what we had in Martinsville. But I don't know. I don't know what to do at this point. At this point, I see everybody on social media saying that Martinsville should lose a race. And I felt like a couple years ago that was unthinkable. I think the couple of tracks that you have to have 2 dates at are Talladega, Daytona, and Martinsville. I feel like those tracks have to have 2 dates. Every other track, I don't think necessarily needs 2 dates. Someone maybe argue Darlington, but I don't mind there being just one race at Darlington because the Southern 500. I just like the spotlight to be more on the crown jewel event, so I don't mind that. The same thing with even Charlotte. I don't mind there just being the one race on the oval. Now there's going to be 2 this year, but I wouldn't mind there just being one, just to put the spotlight in the Coca-Cola 600. And then Bristol isn't quite as good as it used to be. Plus, the spring race isn't a big seller. Not a lot of people go to the spring race because they much rather go to the night race in the early fall to late summer. So I don't mind that being one race either. But I felt like Martinsville had to have 2 races. It's Martinsville. It's one of the best tracks on the schedule. There's not a lot of tracks that race like Martinsville on the schedule, and it's a big part of the history of NASCAR, going to Martinsville Speedway, going to the Paperclip in Virginia. And I don't really have an argument at this point for Martinsville having 2 dates with the way the racing is on short tracks. And that doesn't mean replace it with another short track, because it's probably not going to be good racing either. So we can't go to like Wilkesboro, or I would love to go to Rockingham, and I hope Rockingham gets put on the schedule because I just want NASCAR to go to Rockingham. But I feel like that first trip to Rockingham with this car isn't going to be great. Even though Rockingham is a speedway, they're probably going to do a short track package for Rockingham, because the way Rockingham races, it'll probably be a short track package, and it might not put on the best racing. I don't know. I guess we would have to see. I wouldn't be against it, but yeah, it just sucks. It just sucks growing up watching NASCAR for so many years. I looked at Martinsville as one of the best race, and I still do. I still think it's one of the best racetracks on the schedule, because like I said at the beginning of this episode, every race car that gets on that racetrack, other than probably the most important car at that racetrack, because it brings in the most money, it brings the most eyes, the NASCAR Cup Series. The NASCAR Cup Series does not put on a good race in Martinsville, but the O'Reilly Series does. The Truck Series does. ARCA does. Whelen Modifieds, they do that too. Late models, even the Miatas, they all put on a fantastic show. Every single car that gets on Martinsville puts on a fantastic show, except for the frickin' NASCAR Cup Series, which is very, very disappointing. And I'm disappointed the horsepower didn't do much. It didn't really have much effect this past weekend. Maybe they need to put even more horse. I don't know what to do. I really don't know. Maybe like I just said, maybe put in more horsepower. I don't think there's more they could do with the tires, because there was a lot of tire fall off. The tires did their job. And it's also hard to move these cars. It's hard to move. You can't really do a bump and run in these cars. It's either you wreck them or you plow them out of the way. You can't really do a bump and run with these cars. It's just they're too sturdy or whatever. It just kind of sucks. It just kind of sucks being as big of a NASCAR fan I'm from Virginia. I'm a big Martinsville fan, and to see Martinsville race the way it is very disappointing. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you overall feel about the Cookout 400, the Cup Series race at Martinsville Speedway? All right, there wasn't a bunch of big events in this race, but I think the number one talking point, other than maybe Chase Elliott winning, he's the most popular driver, so I guess that could be probably the biggest talking point. But in my opinion, the biggest talking point after this race was Bubba and Bubba Wallace and the Carson Hocevar incident. Bubba Wallace was very up. Just to give background on this, Bubba Wallace and he said it in his interview, he was upset about Hocevar throwing it 3 wide on the restart into turns 1 and 2. And I honestly was watching. Hocevar was doing this all race. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but pretty much every single restart that I saw in this race, Hocevar was sending it 3 wide to the bottom. And I like Hocevar, but doing that at Martinsville is fucking ballsy. Like, someone's going to do what Bubba did to him. And I'm surprised it didn't happen earlier, because I was seeing it. I saw it on the first lap. I saw it in the opening lap of the race. Like, he was doing it all race. If Hocevar was starting on the bottom lane, he was making it 3 wide, or at least attempting to make it 3 wide into turns 1 and 2. And that's what he did to Bubba. Bubba wasn't very happy about it. I saw Bubba Wallace's onboard camera. I think he tried to wreck him. It's hard for me to 100%. He was definitely at least trying to knock him out of the way. 120%, he was at least trying to knock him out of the way. I can't 100% say that he was trying to wreck him, but I'm pretty sure he was trying to wreck him. He just completely sends it into 3 and 4. There's no question about that. Completely sends it into 3 and 4. Hits him like 4 or 5 times. And on that 4th or 5th time, he hits him in the left side of the bumper and just spins him around. Hocevar would end up continuing the race and getting a top 20 finish, while Bubba Wallace completely totaled his car, finished 36th. Some of you know I'm a big Wallace fan. I would consider Bubba one of my favorite drivers. I would say if I had to make a list, he'd probably be in the top 5. And some of you also know I'm a Kyle Busch fan. When Kyle Busch does something stupid or fucks up, even if he says it wasn't his fault, I call him out on it, and I'm gonna call Bubba. This is 120% on Bubba. I don't know what the fuck Bubba was doing. Bubba just saw red in this moment. His face was as red as the Hardee's red on his freaking car. Like, he was red hot. He must have been red hot. And it's probably because it's Hocevar. He's probably tired of Hocevar doing stupid shit. Because I'm not going to lie, sending it 3 wide into turns 1 and 2 is dumb. Sending it 3 wide into turns 1 and 2 at Martinsville on the restart, I can understand if maybe it's the last restart or the second to last restart. It's aggressive, but I understand it. But like I said, he was doing this all race. And Bubba probably saw him do it to other people as well. Because like I said, he was doing this. Look back. If you can watch, they probably have the race on YouTube by now. Look at every single restart. If Carson Hocevar is on the bottom, he's at least attempting. He might not make it 3 wide by the time you go into turn 1 and 2, but he's at least peeking. He's at least peeking to the inside to make it 3 wide on every single restart. So I think Bubba was just seeing complete red in that moment, and he flat out wrecked Hocevar. He flat out wrecked him. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure he wrecked him on purpose. I'm like 80 or 90% sure he wrecked him on purpose, but he definitely mean to slant. He definitely mean to do everything else. He hit him 4 or 5 times. That's not an accident. That's not an accident. He definitely, at bar minimum, wanted to send some sort of message because he was clearly unhappy with what he did. I don't think it should be a suspendable offense. I think, in my opinion, when it comes to intentionally wrecking, I don't care if someone even admits to it, because back in the day, people would wreck each other all the time and they wouldn't get punished for it. It was a different time. I understand that and whatever. But the only time I personally have a problem, if someone's intentionally wrecking somebody, if, for example, it's like on the front straightaway and they're hooking them into the wall. Like, for example, what happened with Stenhouse and Rowdy at Wilkesboro last year for the All-Star race. That was an intentional wreck, and it was a hook, but it was also in a corner. They were at slow speed. There wasn't any necessarily immediate danger. But like, for example, what Elliott did to Denny, or what Bubba did to Larson at Vegas, for example, you should 120. You should be suspended. Like what Hill did to Almirola at Indy last year for the O'Reilly Series. That's 120%. That's worth a suspension. That's worth a suspension. Other than that, I'm not for suspending guys for intentionally wrecking or moving people out of the way. It's racing. It's NASCAR racing. I shouldn't say it's racing because a lot of motorsports really frown upon that, but that's NASCAR racing. That's how NASCAR racing's always been. That's one of the reasons why it got so popular. So I'm not for Bubba really getting any punishment from this, but Hocevar already races pretty much everybody aggressively. I know Hocevar wasn't happy about it. I heard his radio. He wasn't too what's the word? He wasn't too descriptive about it, but he clearly was very upset about it. The team was upset about it because Hocevar didn't like ram him up the racetrack. I think he got a little into his door, a little bit, just typical rubbing his racing, typical stuff that we see at Martinsville. Nothing too extravagant. I think it was just the whole idea of him sending it 3 wide is what made Bubba mad because he brought that up in the interview. He went out of his way to bring that up in the interview. That pissed him off. But like I said, no punishment to Bubba. But I think if there is going to be punishment to Bubba, it's going to come from Carson Hocevar. Because Carson Hocevar ain't scared to use his front bumper. We've seen it. He's not at all scared of using it. And we'll have to see what happens. We have to see what happens. They have a week to cool off. There's no Cup Series race this upcoming weekend, it being Easter Sunday. So maybe at Bristol, we see something from Hocevar to Bubba. I wouldn't be too surprised. I didn't hear anything about them talking after the race or having any sort of conversation in the garage or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them calls the other one during the week. I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way either because Hocevar has went on the record a couple times, but like, yeah, I didn't call him. Like he doesn't. Hocevar doesn't usually apologize for the things that he does. So I don't know if Bubba will do that. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen here. I really don't. I just wouldn't be surprised if nothing happens, but I also wouldn't be very surprised if Hocevar pays him back at Bristol or maybe some other track down the line. It just wouldn't at all surprise me because what I think Bubba did was just too far. He was way too far. It was way too far. Not worth the punishment though, but definitely too far. And he saw red, and the person that ended up being behind the wall was him. And I think he had a top 10 car, for sure a top 15 car, but I think he had a top 10 car with everything happening at the end of the race. Maybe he sneaks in a top 5, who knows, and just really shot himself in the foot and ruined his day. He ruined his day. He ended up finishing 36th behind the wall and out of the race just for seeing red, getting too angry in the moment. And I think it was a good interview by Bubba as well because he didn't blatantly say that he intentionally wrecked him. He went out of his way to say that he didn't. So that's at least covering his ass in case if NASCAR wanted to do something about it. Even if he did say that he tried to wreck him, I don't know. I'm against really suspending people, especially for short tracks, just because we've seen it over a number of years. We've seen people wreck each other, and it happens. It's short track racing. That's short track racing. So I wouldn't want to see him get suspended for that. Like I said earlier, if he hooked him into the wall on the straightaway or something, probably a different story, I would say. But he just hits him in not even the quarter panel, just the left side of the bumper and turns him around. Like I said, I'm still not 100% sure that he wrecked him on purpose, but he definitely at least meant to send a message. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the Bubba Wallace, Carson Hocevar incident that we had at Martinsville on Sunday? All right, and the last thing we got to talk about before we finish up is Denny Hamlin dominating the day, but NASCAR's most popular driver ends up getting the victory. First, we'll talk about Denny. Completely dominant. That Bob's Furniture Toyota was completely dominant. He was the class of the field all race long, and I think that's one of the reasons why it may have not seemed as entertaining on TV. Because like I said earlier, I think there was more passing than what we usually see at Martinsville in this generation of car. But Denny Hamlin was just stinking up the race. He was by far the best. He's by far the best car in the field, had a completely dominating day. And if Alan Gustafson didn't call a great race, and I've said it on this channel many, many, many times, because I know that Chase Elliott fans do not like Alan Gustafson. And if Chase Elliott doesn't win a race, or if Chase Elliott finishes like 15th or something, it's all Alan Gustafson's fault. He's an idiot. Oh, he sucks. Like, Chase Elliott fans hate Alan Gustafson. And once again, Alan Gustafson proved on Sunday he is one of the best. I don't think he is the best crew chief. I don't even think he's the best crew chief at Hendrick Motorsports. I think that's Cliff Daniels. I think Cliff Daniels is the best. And Rudy has definitely gotten pretty good as well. And I think he's right there with Gustafson. But I also think Cliff Daniels is the best crew chief in all of NASCAR. That's my opinion. I don't know. There's probably other people that share that opinion. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is the best crew chief? But Alan Gustafson called a fantastic race. He made a ballsy call. He decided to pit early and come in and get the track position. I think he was banking on a caution. I was saying it in the moment. I said in the exact moment when Denny Hamlin came down pit lane, I was like, well, Chase Elliott and that 9 crew, they're hoping that a caution comes out in around 20 laps. That way everybody has to come in and get 4 fresh Goodyears. Didn't end up coming out in like 20 laps. I think it ended up coming out in like 12 laps or something. But tires actually mattered in this race. Just everybody was just on the same strategy all race long, so you didn't really see it have a big impact. That's one of the reasons why I don't want the stage cautions, because we would have saw more deferring strategies throughout the day if we didn't have the stage cautions. I will harp on that about every week at this point, because I feel like it's always going to make the race better. It just is. But so we didn't see deferring strategies throughout much of the day until we had these green flag pit stops during the last stage of the race. And that's where we saw this. And it set up Chase Elliott in second place. He was in second place, and he was able to take the lead on one of the restarts and just didn't look back. It just seemed like the clean air was king. The clean air was king for that number 9 car. Hamlin was eventually able to drive up and catch him and get within a half a second. But then throughout the remainder of that race, I think it was like the last 20 laps, Denny Hamlin was anywhere from a half second back to a full second back, and he was just going back and forth in between that. I felt like there was a couple opportunities where he was getting pretty close when they were going through traffic, but then Denny would get really held up in traffic. Like I think John Hunter really held him up in one of those. He got sideways under John. I think it was John Hunter that he got sideways underneath him coming off a 4, and that cost him a lot of time. I think Denny was by far the best car, and Denny probably should have won this race, but it proves that strategy is a big deal. It proves that the crew chief, I've said it with this generation of car a lot, that the crew chief matters more now with this generation of car in the Cup Series than maybe it ever has before. Like obviously you had your Ray Everhams, you had your Chad Knauses, you had these crew chiefs that would get super involved with the car and with the engineering and all that. Not every crew chief gets as involved as they did, and they were super geniuses, those two. So they definitely did some very important stuff and took crew chiefing to the next level. But over these last generations of cars, strategy means so much. Track position's key. Getting that clean air is key because it's so difficult to pass in this generation of car. And Gustafson deserves his own grandfather clock. He does. Alan Gustafson deserves his own grandfather clock because he won that race for Elliott. Like Elliott obviously at the end of this race had to keep on his toes. He had to get through traffic. He had to do all that, and he did a great job. He did a great job at all of that. But I think, in my opinion, Gustafson had more of an impact on this win than Elliott. And that's no offense or nothing against Elliott. I just think what Alan Gustafson did near the end of that race with that green flag pit stop and with everything on pit road all day, really, it was ballsy. It took balls, it took strategy, it took brains, and it was a great move. It was the only way he was going to win. Alan Gustafson knew that the only way he was going to win that race is if he got off of strategy and got his driver clean air, because he knew how much clean air meant, getting through traffic and all of that. It's an advantage being the race leader, and just he knew that nobody had anything for Denny. On the short run, the long run, the middle run, it didn't matter. Nobody had anything for Denny Hamlin. Not a thing. They didn't have anything for him. But Alan Gustafson figured out a way, and NASCAR's most popular driver, Chase Elliott, gets his first win of the year, gets the first win for Hendrick Motorsports of the year, and gets the first win for Chevrolet of the year. So, hell of a job by Alan Gustafson. I think he's probably the biggest story here. And then Chase Elliott, he gave a great interview. He seemed pretty pumped about his victory, actually. Chase Elliott's not the most emotional person. He doesn't show a lot of emotion, but he kept on harping on, this is the earliest I've won in a season. And Elliott's honestly had a really great start to the year. He's continued that Mr. Consistent sort of thing that he's had over the last couple of years, even though the next gen car, he's not as good in the next gen car as he was in the last generation of car. But I think over the last, I'd say a year and a half, maybe 2 years, he's really kind of figured it out on how to race this generation of car. I still don't think he's figured out road courses as much, for example, because he's not nearly as good of a road course racer in this generation of car compared to last. But he's having a great year. He's has to be one of the championship favorites. He's near the top in points. I think he's fourth in points right now. So just a great start of the year for Elliott, and a great moment just seeing the NASCAR. Like, I'm not the biggest Elliott fan. He's the most popular driver in the sport. I feel like he should do more for the sport. I feel like he doesn't have much of a personality, yada yada yada. But taking out my personal bias, I don't hate Chase Elliott, but I wouldn't say I'm a fan of him either. Taking my personal bias out of Chase Elliott, it's always great for the sport to have the most popular guy win. It's always great for the sport for the most popular driver to win, and that's why when you look at the Jeff Gluck poll, it's 50-50 right now pretty much. You got 50% yes, 50% no, and on if it was a good race or not. I think if Chase Elliott doesn't win this race, it's probably 70% no that this was a good race and 30% saying yes, it was a good race. I think that's probably what it would have been if Elliott didn't win. But Elliott won. Most popular driver, Chase Elliott, goes to victory lane. The Chase Sexuals are friggin' hyped. They're hyped. The Chase Sexuals are hyped. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Denny Hamlin's performance? How do you feel about Alan Gustafson's gutsy call? How do you feel about Chase Elliott getting his first win of the year? And now that I'm done with that, that will do it for this week's edition of Car on the Hauler. Whether you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, I would appreciate a like, comment, subscribe, share if you want to. Do whatever you got to do. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And next week, I will have another. I think there's probably some people wondering, would I have another edition of Car on the Hauler next week just because there's not the Cup Series? Yeah, I will. I will be doing a Car on the Hauler next week for Rockingham Speedway. So I am looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to watching The Rock this weekend. It's Easter weekend, so I'm looking forward to it for sure. But let me know your thoughts about anything I talked about here today, whether it was just the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, Allgaier winning, Lee Pulliam having the success that he did, the Cup Series race, how it wasn't as exciting as we thought it was. What's your opinion on Bubba versus Hocevar? And, of course, Denny Hamlin, a dominant day, but the most popular driver, Chase Elliott, wins. But hope to see you next week for another edition of Car on the Hauler post Rockingham. But for now, I'm Trackside Larry saying peace.